the blame is on Netanyahu from all the leaders, like also even in Germany, the strongest Israeli ally in Europe is now starting to criticize Netanyahu, and um, and also Giorgia Meloni, the far right president in Italy, started to criticize Netanyahu without challenging. The economic and economic ties with Israel, the weapons sale to Israel. Italy is the third country in the world. Germany is the second after the US.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Michael Spath. I'm the Executive Director of the Indiana Center for Middle East Peace in Fort Wayne, Indiana. I'm also on the board of ICAD USA, the other co-sponsor of this webinar, and I work with Isa Amro on the Friends of Hebron in Hebron. This is the second of our two-part series on the dangers of Israel's and the U.S.'s normalization agenda, and not just the danger, but the threat of normalization. The devastating effects it has for Palestine, what an anti normalization campaign might look like. The first last week was with Jeff Halper and Sam Bohor. Dalia Ismail is an independent Palestinian-Italian analyst and journalist focusing on Palestine, geopolitics, and media. Her article, How Europe is Managing Guilt Over Gaza, The Politics of Moral Cleansing, is an important contribution to the conversation. And we're just really delighted, Dahlia, to have you joining us today. Thank you for coming.
Thank you all for the invitation.
Um, we're going to get, Dahlia, to our discussion about your article and normalization in just a minute. But a couple of questions just to set the context. We're day, what, 712 of Israel's genocide. I mean, just let that sink in, right? 712 days of genocide of Palestine. Recently, the so called Smotrich plan and the Trump plan have made headlines again. Both are what I call Israel's final solution for Palestine. The Smotrich map has Israel from the river to the sea, with the exception of a half dozen ghettos around the major Palestinian population centers. And the Trump plan is similar, and it places Gaza under a U.S. run trusteeship for 10 years, depopulating Gaza of Palestinians, including bribing them to leave, and turning it into a Gaza Riviera and tech manufacturing hub. So, talk to us about the present context in which you wrote your article.
Yes, I wrote this article because I reflected very much on this sudden repositioning in Europe and in the West in general. So we have assisted at the first year of genocide, where most of the people were pro-Israel, or also they were pro-Palestine, but they still condemned the Palestinian resistance and the 7th of October before every condemnation of Israel. So they could not separate the facts of the 7th of October and the genocide. And this was a constant behavior from everyone. Uh, and then there's after Donald Trump won the election in the U.S., I think there was a repositioning, because I think that specifically the liberals, when Trump is in the government, they always try to reposition themselves against the Trump administration. So I was very angry personally about this repositioning and about this hypocrisy. From one side, I was very happy because yes, because we need more and more people. We have to reach the critical masses in order to be able to stop the genocide, because of course um, nobody ever thought that the genocide will end thanks to justice, right? Because the world is profoundly unfair and built on power dynamics. So I thought that from one side it's very natural that this is happening, so everyone is now horrified by the genocide, and everyone is acting as they if they were since forever pro-Palestine, and since forever they are on the side of the Palestinians. But this is not true, because every time they condemned the 7th of October, before condemning even like the destruction of hospitals, the besieging of hospitals, the mass graves, and everything we have seen in the past 2 years in Gaza, and they every time they condemned the Palestinians and the Palestinian resistance, blah blah blah, and they tried to divide the good Palestinians, the good victims, as Muhammad al-Kurd wrote in his last book. So the good victims who deserve our solidarity, and the bad Palestinians who don't deserve our solidarity and have to be demonized. So every time they did this, they created a big problem, and they just helped the Zionism, and they helped Israel, and they helped the Western propaganda, the genocidal propaganda, and this is a fact. But now they don't want to admit it. And what usually happens in history is that uh, when some people reposition themselves in the last months of the worst crimes in humanity, they will like tell the next generations that they were always on the right side, blah blah blah, and they were partisans. Like, this happened in Italy. I live in Italy, and Italy is a country where we had a very strong and important resistance movement against the Nazi fascism. They gave their blood to liberate this country from fascism, but there were very few people who had the bravery to go and fight. But now, if you hear the Italians, every Italian will just say, "Oh, my grandfather was a partisan." Like,
Yeah.
immediately they became all partisans, right? And this is also happening now. Like, of course, we are far, unfortunately, from seeing the genocide ending, but I think that this is the way we are taking. So yeah, my article came from this reflection and anger, and I wanted answers to my questions.
Thank you, Dalia. A number of us believe that, in fact, we talked last week with Jeff Halper and Sam Bahor, that this normalization process that you refer to, that they've been writing about, is really the end game. It's trying to sanitize a genocide, apartheid, ethnic cleansing as normal. Uh, so you've got the Abraham Accords, the recent announcements by France and the UK and Canada and Australia and others to recognize Palestine. So you write that, quote, there's a growing need among progressive EU leaders to distract themselves from Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, who's become the focal point of international blame. By isolating him as the sole architect of the genocide, the EU avoids confronting its own structural complicity. Delegating responsibility for the horrors committed in Palestine solely to Netanyahu and a few others functions as a psychological defense mechanism. Explain what you mean there.
Yes. If you, I think you all noticed that the blame is on Netanyahu from all the leaders, like also even in Germany, the strongest Israeli ally in Europe is now starting to criticize Netanyahu, and also Giorgia Meloni, the far right president in Italy, started to criticize Netanyahu without challenging. The economic and economic ties with Israel, the weapons sale to Israel. Italy is the third country in the world. Germany is the second after the US. Um, so this is very this is what's happening, like Netanyahu is portrayed as a monster, as a bad leader, and without him Israel could come back to be a normal state, a state where, of course there were problems, but not as we are seeing now. So before, the situation was okay for them, and that's what happened, and also that's why before the 7th of October, people in the West did not talk about Palestine anymore. And I remember, for example, when there was the 2021 aggression on Gaza, and before, you had to pray people just to talk about Palestine. It was not in their interest. And now they will deny and they will say, no, we always talked about Palestine, blah, blah, blah. But the truth is that for at least 20 years, in the last 20 years, Palestine was not a priority anymore. And that's what the 7th of October did. It's just as Hamas wrote in its 16 pages document that they released in January 2024 about explaining their version of the 7th of October. They said that Palestine was not important for anyone anymore. And Saudi Arabia was in the process of normalizing with Israel, even Saudi Arabia. So the situation was getting very, very bad for Palestinians. So that's why what the 7th of October did, actually. Just it could make the world focus again on Palestine. Um, and that's very common. That's what also happened in Nazi Germany. After the liberation of Germany, the Germans could rebuild their identity by uh, just blaming Adolf Hitler and blaming other few Nazi generals, and they never confronted their own complicity and their own responsibility in the um Holocaust and in the Second World War. And that's why now we are seeing Germany as the second country supporting Israel during this genocide, and Italy also the third. So they were countries where they had the worst fascist and Nazi dictatorships, and now we see them supporting Israel. So, and that is coming from the fact that they never confronted their past.
You make an important point. The religious and political right, they've supported Israel. I mean, that's sort of a given. But by just blaming Netanyahu or a few other Israel leaders, it provides space for progressive religious leaders and progressive political leaders in our country, Democrats, to cleanse their consciences by kind of condemning Netanyahu, but leaving the whole Israel ethnic cleansing genocidal project to continue on. The status quo. So it kind of cleanses the consciences of the progressives.
Yes, exactly. And also because when you portray Netanyahu as the sole responsible of everything, you can just keep selling weapons to Israel. You can keep having economic ties with Israel. So it's just Netanyahu the problem. The rest is is not a problem. So it's a very calculated strategy. It's not um, it's not neutral, this language.
I want to continue on this line of conversation. You wrote that when mainstream EU and US media give space, like they have recently, to internal Israeli critics, like the previous Prime Minister Ehud Olmert and the Democrat Party leader Yair Golan, it's actually part of this strategy to frame the problem as Netanyahu downplaying the more than 7 decade long apartheid and ethnic cleansing agenda. Uh, because you write Olmert and Golan played central roles in past Israeli massacres in Gaza. So the media is complicit in this as well. And if you, so, I want you to address that, but also secondarily the 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 strategy of murdering Palestinian journalists and not allowing foreign journalists into Gaza to document what's actually happening there.
I missed your last sentence.
Well, go ahead and address, Israel's uh, 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 the strategy of raising up Olmert and Golan, even though they played central roles in previous uh, um, ethnic cleansing attempts efforts in Gaza.
Yeah. So yesterday here in Italy, the Democratic Party, so the leftist party, did a conference with a few people, journalists, politicians, blah, blah, and Ehud Olmert. And they were talking about building peace between Israel and Palestine. And so this shows that the intention of the EU is that now, as we said, is heavily criticizing Netanyahu, is just to build a post Netanyahu leadership in Israel. So a leadership that is more um, that is less um, that is more strategic. We can, let's say that Netanyahu is not very strategic. He is not good at portraying Israel in the international media. So while Ehud Olmert is very, very strategic. So when Ehud Olmert was at the government in Israel, I remember I was very young when the Operation Coast Lead happened in 2008. Um, yeah, everyone here was saying, yes, but the peace, but Israel and Palestine and the terrorist attacks against Israel, blah, blah, blah. I remember also in school, and my professor also talked about her Israeli friend who was uh, terrified about what is happening, and blah blah blah. So um, I think that and the crimes against the Palestinians were heavy at the time. Like Israel used chemical weapons in Gaza, and this is still under investigation by the international organizations, by the international tribunals. Um, but this is not important for the EU, since again they don't want to challenge the economic and political interests they have in Israel. They just want to get rid of Netanyahu because he's creating chaos in Europe, because in Europe we are having masses and masses demonstrating every week against against the European government in solidarity with Palestine. So in the West, there is a lot of pressure from the populations against the governments, and that's why they want to get rid of Netanyahu, just to make the water calmer. Um, so yeah, they are trying, all the Democrats and the liberals, just to um, rethink about a leadership in Israel that will success the Netanyahu administration. Like this is already happening in whole Europe. Like Ehud Olmert is traveling in Europe and to talk with the local governments and politicians and lobbies, just to yes, to create this plan.
It's interesting. You mentioned the demonstrations every week. I'm going to be in South Africa in 2 weeks, leading a group of Palestinian activists on behalf of Palestine from here in this country and in Europe. And we're going to be focusing on South Africa's support for Palestine during our 2 weeks in South Africa. And I was exchanging texts with a friend of mine there, and he said on Saturday the 27th in Cape Town, they're expecting, he called it the mother of all marches, 200,000 plus people demonstrating on behalf of Palestine in South Africa. So you're right. I mean, we can see around the world, everywhere except for here, and maybe a few European countries, support for Palestine. Let me let me ask you. You also suggest in your article that there's a real campaign to marginalize and even eliminate Palestinian voices from the conversation. We saw this in the so-called Abraham Accords, and we're seeing this now with European conversation with Israelis. Everybody wants to talk to Israel, and the Palestinians are left out of the conversation. It's part of an intentional strategy. So address that, but also then ask. I want you to address how we can make sure that Palestinian voices are heard. I mean, we're talking with you today, but how can we make sure? How? What are other ways we can make sure Palestinian voices are heard?
I think that um, like it's easier because of course like Palestinians are marginalized because um, the Western media is very racist, and it's intentional because they don't want to humanize the Palestinians. But at the same time, I think that there is also uh, um, practical obstacles. Like we live in a besieged region. We don't have, sometimes we don't have like internet connection. We don't have the possibility to access to the media and to the international platforms. So and sometimes we just don't know. We cannot like get to know people outside. And yeah, I think that what we can do is just to give our platforms to Palestinians, like always invite Palestinians to speak in the events, share their articles, translate their articles. Like sometimes we have very good articles written in Arabic, but since the Israelis write the same things in English, they're just more easy to share them, right? So I think that the only thing we can do is to amplify their voices by sharing their work, interviewing them, invite them to the events, and like make sure that there is at least one Palestinian in every event we are making about Palestine.
You know, connected to this is the strategy too of, I mean, the intentional murder of Palestinian journalists in Gaza. I mean, it's not by happenstance, right? What is it, over 250 now or so? Palestinian journalists, and not allowing Western journalists into Gaza. And so the courage, really, the bravery of just regular Gazan citizens to smuggle out YouTube videos or, TikTok videos or other kinds of information really is remarkable. And these are heroes, right? They're doing heroic work. But the journalists are being killed as part of an intentional strategy. within Gaza. Comment on that, please.
Yes, like the number of journalists killed in a war zone is the largest number ever in history. So, and Israel has always killed Palestinian journalists specifically for this, because not only through the propaganda and the money Israel invests every year in propaganda in the whole world. They dehumanize the Palestinians and they eliminate their voice and they cancel every possibility to make the Palestinians participate in the debate. They directly kill them in Palestine. And this is horrific. And the most terrifying aspect of all this is the lack of respect of by the international journalists and international organizations, the lack of respect and that they give to the Palestinian journalists. Like I read, for example, when the five famous journalists were killed in the Nasser hospital. One of them was a Reuters contributor, and they didn't even define him as journalist. They define him as a contractor. Like
Mm.
they don't see them as human beings, and uh, Gaza showed us that, like, I'm a journalist and I'm very, very critical about international journalism at this point. Like, is it really meaningful to still go to a country and spread what's happening there as we used to do? Because Gaza showed us that the local journalists can do everything. Like we know everything about Gaza, and we know everything without international journalists having had access to Gaza. So we know everything thanks to the local journalists who risk their lives and who worked in very, very extreme conditions. They killed their relatives, they killed their parents, they starved them to death. Um, like I think that what happened to the journalists in Gaza is just what I think that it's a shame for the world, and it's a shame for all the international committees of journalists and for the international journalists who keep working in this system, in this media system that um, gave no respect for the Palestinian journalists.
You know, this normalization strategy that we've been talking about, and of course our eyes are rightly focused on Gaza because of the genocide there. But you talk about that. It's also part of the strategic effort by Israel to rewrite the narrative. That's what you call it, rewriting the narrative on the genocide, so that I'm going to quote now, so that quote, the genocide is portrayed as something new, erasing what Professor Ilan Pape described as an incremental genocide carried out since at least 1948. So, this ethnic cleansing and genocide is happening not only in Gaza, but throughout Palestine, in the West Bank too. And it's part of this strategic effort, and it's part Israel's strategic effort, and it's also part of this normalization campaign by Israel.
Um,
So the West Bank, as well as Gaza, and this rewriting, Israel's rewriting of the narrative on genocide, as you put it.
Yes, like as we said before, all this shift in the Western world about Gaza is also about rewriting what happened. Like they are gonna say that uh, the majority of the people were on the Palestinian side from the beginning, and that also the governments they will um, they will tell that they were always on the side of justice, because if like a few countries now will they say that they're going to recognize the Palestinian state, so they're going to make this symbolic act, like again recognizing the Palestinian state, which is something that will not change anything concretely. It's just a symbolic act. But by doing that, they can say that it's not true that they helped Israel perpetrating the genocide. They can say, no, we did this, so we are not complicit. We were not complicit. And that's what's happening now. Like what, as I said, the shift in position after Donald Trump won the elections made me more hopeful from one hand, because now there is a concrete chance to stop the genocide. But on the other hand, we are assisting as to rewriting of history. And this will not allow us to have true justice, because these people and these governments will never be persecuted for complicity in genocide, because it would be harder to demonstrate their complicity thanks to this shift.
You talk about the need to reframe the conversation, or counter rewrite the narrative to what Israel's trying to do. We talked last week with Sam Bohor and Jeff Halper, that we support all the human rights efforts, BDS and the like. I mean, that goes without saying. We support BDS. But it's time, they suggested, to go beyond just a human rights approach to a political approach, a political solution. They say, let's get political. So, can you talk a little bit about the shifting of the narrative from, there's a conflict, and so we need to take one of the sides, and we need to help the Palestinians through efforts in BDS, the human rights approach, to a political approach with a political solution? Can you address that?
Yeah, of course, because now they are treating the Gaza catastrophe as a humanitarian crisis, right? Because they don't want to address and face the fact that Palestine is a political issue. Of course, it's also a humanitarian issue, but the humanitarian issue is a consequence of the political issue. And you cannot solve it by just saying to Israel, oh, you have to send the humanitarian aid to Gaza. And of course, Israel will not do that. Like, why should it do it? Like, if the world is just allowing it to commit everything that it has committed so far, like it's not just by ordering Israel or releasing another UN resolution against Israel that Israel will stop its crimes, right? And I think that the international organizations and the United Nations and the countries know that very, very well. But this, they keep playing with the words. They keep playing just to calm the international rage, the international demonstrations and movements of solidarity for Palestine. They are trying also to divide the people who participate in the solidarity movement. They want to divide us in between the good pro-Palestine person, the more civilized, that can speak with the institutions, that can understand the institutions, that are more moderate, and those who are more aggressive and extreme, with whom we cannot have a true dialogue, etc. And that's what they are doing. So they are giving a few um, crumbles, like for example, the recognition of the Palestinian state, and we need in the Freedom Flotilla, and we need to yeah, help the Palestinian people with humanitarian aid, etc. And so some people in the solidarity movement are satisfied with this, right? Because we also have very big movements with a lot of opinions. So many of us are okay and satisfied with this. And us who wants true structural political change, of course, are not satisfied with this. And we know very, very well that this is just a way to calm us and to calm our rage and to calm our movement. But this is not gonna help the Palestinian people.
You, I want you to say a word about the fragmentation of the Palestinian people. On the one hand, right, they're together, one voice, one people. On the other hand, is the Israeli matrix of control has fragmented Palestinian political leadership, many of the NGOs on the ground, so that they're siloed, and um, also on the individual activist level. So talk a little bit about this I mean, that's part of the strategy too, right? This Israeli matrix of control, to use Jeff Halper's words, the fragmentation of the Palestinian people. I mean, even geographically, right, with these little Bandustans, these ghettos, so that there can't be a mass movement that's not controlled by Israel.
Yes, absolutely. Israel since 1948 has pursued this politics of fragmentation of the territory and also of the population, because this helped it both have taking control of Palestine and of the Palestinian people and their narrative, because um, most of the time Palestinians cannot coordinate, right? Like we
Hmm.
were all united during the intifadas, but and in other occasions, but um, for example, now Gaza is fighting, and the West Bank also, the resistance in the West Bank is also fighting. But and of course we have continuity between the two, and of course, like the situation in the West Bank now is devastating, but it's also devastating, and this is linked not to what's happening in Gaza. Like it's not separated, but at the same time, like we are divided, and through the years we have also cultural differences, we have also differences in mentality, and this is so true. And also we are not, like we have differences with the Palestinians in the diaspora, those who fled Palestine, who were who fled the country to Jordan, to Syria, to Lebanon, and then to the West sometimes. Like they never had the chance to come back to Palestine, right? So we through the decades we have developed different situations, different political situations, different mentalities, and this is the biggest yes, this is the biggest intention of Israel to divide the Palestinians, and we see it also within the West Bank and within Gaza, inside these small territories themselves. They always try to divide us.
Dahlia, I have just a couple more questions, but before I get to them, I just want to remind everybody that we have a webinar next week, the same day and same time, Wednesday at noon next week, featuring Lauren McGrail, who lived and worked in Palestine and took interviews with many of the women in the Bethlehem Beit Sohor area who survived the Nakba. Anyway, she has been connected with an art and poetry group in Gaza for the last couple of years since she's been back in the U.S. And she'll be sharing the art and poetry from Gaza and other Palestinian artists, as well as her own art and poetry. That's next Wednesday, September 24th at 12 noon Eastern Time. And that information's on in the chat. All right, Dalia. Let me ask you, um, what would well, let me ask it this way. And we're returning to something that you said earlier on in the interview here. You don't just call what Israel's doing a political strategy. The title of your article describes it as a moral cleansing, a way for Europe, a way for Europe to manage its guilt. So it's a moral cleansing for Europe and a way for Europe to manage its guilt by the way that they're selectively recognizing a Palestinian state. So talk about that.
The concept of moral cleansing.
Yeah, you call
Yeah,
what they're what how Israel is selectively and carefully recognizing a Palestinian state is a moral cleansing and as a way to manage its guilt.
yes, of course. Like, um, um, as we said, European and American societies don't want to confront their own role in this genocide. They are just saying that it's Netanyahu's leadership, that Netanyahu failed, that Netanyahu is a criminal, that this is due to the far right Israeli parties, not to Israel itself and the ethnic cleansing and genocide that Israel was built on. Um, and to achieve this result, like to blame Netanyahu and absolve themselves from any responsibility. One of the strategy was before 7th of October just to ignore the problem and just saying, okay, this is something that is happening far from us. It's not something that we can do something about. There are a lot of wars in the world, there are a lot of problems, and it's not why Palestine, right? Even though in Europe and in the US are actively complicit in Palestine, in they're not actively complicit in all the wars of the world, right? So Palestine is very, very specific, and um, and now that the final, I call it the final solution of the genocide of the Palestinians, um, uh, they are trying to minimize the responsibility. So yes, it's true that we had academic ties with Israel, economic ties with Israel, but at the same time now we are trying to cut them, um, and so we are not responsible as Netanyahu anymore. And they're trying to distance themselves that at the end of the day, they were better than Netanyahu. So why are we angry at them? Why do we want to um, uh, to responsibilize them? Like it, like I am impressed also by the fact that sometimes we are angry and we talk to some of these progressive soft Zionist people, and we try to show them that they are complicit in this and that they are saying they are making a lot of mistakes in their language first and also in their actions, and they are shocked. Like sometimes of course they know, but it's their choice. But other time in other cases it's just that they are shocked, like, why are you blaming me? The problem is Netanyahu. um And this is what I called moral cleansing in my article. The moral cleansing is just minimizing their responsibility, and increasing Netanyahu's responsibility, because also, as you can see, Trump in the media is a monster. Biden was not that monster as Trump. Giorgia Meloni, the far right president in Italy, is a monster. Orban in Hungary is a monster. Like, there are these few monsters in the world, and they are the problems. Like the others, we are all innocent. And even though Joe Biden started the genocide, sold weapons to Israel the whole time, and it was literally him who started the genocide, not Donald Trump. Donald Trump just continued it. But at the end of the day, it's still better than Trump, because they
Yeah.
need this to give the responsibility to someone. They don't want to talk about the collective responsibility, which is for the far right, of course, but also the progressive parties and the left, the liberal left.
I'm glad you said that because, we're facing that in our country. Um, it's easy to focus on Trump as the problem, and you forget two different things. 70 million people plus voted for him. So he could go tomorrow and we still have 70 million people who voted for him. And secondly, the silence and the ineffectiveness and the fecklessness of the left and of Biden's complicity and Kamala Harris's support for the genocide. So I appreciate you raising that. I have one more question for you, and then I'm going to give you the closing word. But what would a campaign against normalization look like? What are some of the things on the macro political level, and what are some of the things on the micro personal level look like? What are some strategic actions that most of us on the call here are from the West, some of the things that we activists on the ground can do? A campaign against an anti-normalization campaign.
Yeah, the answer to this is the BDS movement: boycott, divestment, and sanctions. We just need to follow the reports and the demands of the BDS movement, and follow all their campaigns, because everything is written there. Just how to, like, the solution to against normalization is to boycott the agreements, boycott the ties, cut the ties, and divest. And sanctions is something that is the government's duty. But if we from our side, we boycott consistently, and we divest from Israel, then the governments will cut the ties and will sanction Israel. So, in this, how you fight against normalization practically. Um, I think this is the answer.
Like I said, I'm going to thank you for that, Dahlia. Like I said, I want to give Dahlia the last word, but before I do, just a reminder that a recording of this webinar will be posted on our Indiana Center for Middle East Peace YouTube channel, just like the one has already been posted with Jeff Halper and Sam Bahor from last week. Also, next week, same day and time, a reminder, Wednesday, September 17th at 12 noon Eastern Time, I'll be hosting United Church of Christ pastor, artist, and activist Lauren McGrail, who lived and worked in Palestine for 5 years. Since returning to the U.S., she's been part of a virtual group of artists and poets from Gaza. She'll be sharing some of their art and poetry as well as her own, and you can see the Zoom registration link in the chat. So, Dahlia, any parting words for us?
Um, yes, I want to thank you for your work, and I want yes, to again to highlight the importance of following the BDS movement, which because specifically it's a Palestinian movement. It was born in Palestine, and it's now spread in the whole world. So please, like, it's a very very efficient. It's like it the campaigns created by the BDS movement are studied scientifically, um, and like there are the motivations why we should boycott some companies, events, universities. So there are the reasons, and we can also see the results because they also report all the results, and we should never stop this type of resistance because it's a non-violent resistance, and this is what we can do from the West. Um, we should really insist and keep going with the boycott, divest, sanction movement.
Dahlia, thank you very much. And I appreciate all the rest of you, many of whom I know personally who are activists in your own communities and contexts. Thank you for all you do, and thank you all for joining us today. We hope to see you next Wednesday.